In the heart of the United Kingdom, London, a silent crisis is growing. Known as one of the most iconic cities in the world, London almost fits all the criteria there is to match, but one thing is its homelessness crisis, which the government has failed to control. The economy of the UK itself is grappling with the aftermath of a devastating recession, and the growing homelessness epidemic soon comes after, threatening the very framework of society. What is wrong with the UK's housing market? Why do people become homeless? And what is the government doing about this silent epidemic? This is the story of the UK's homelessness epidemic. Currently, there are 271,000 homeless individuals, including 123,000 children, in England. Homelessness has risen dramatically in the UK for the first time in years as recession effects take place, although it has always been an issue in the UK. The economic effects of a recession are always evident, and one of the most distressing effects is the rise of homelessness. The recent recession in the UK has resulted in a growing homelessness epidemic, pushing individuals and families to extreme measures to find stable housing to live in. It's a cause and effect situation because as the unemployment rate rises, and therefore poverty, more people are going to find it hard to have a place to live in. Some people are faced with this rising case of homelessness, and sudden descent of poverty as a job loss or unexpected expenses would directly contribute to these economic hazards. And some other people who have been holding on for far too long finally reach a point where they are unable to sustain the long-term economic struggles anymore and give in. During a recession, job losses are also on the rise because many businesses struggle to stay in business, and individuals are suddenly hit by unemployment, making them unable to afford their rent or pay back on their mortgage payments. Mortgage defaults or rent arrears were the leading cause of a growing share of people given housing help, and relationship breakdown and rejection from friends and family were also some of the causes of homelessness. However, it's not mainly about the loss of a job, but the loss of a sense of security and stability as well, pushing the affected individual into a dilemma of nowhere to turn for help than the cold streets. This recurring scenario has now become too familiar in the UK. There has been about a 50% increase in people in some areas declaring that they need housing. Government data reports that 26,400 people confronted a local council for assistance on housing. This happened in the first 3 months of 2011, a 23% increase from the same period of the year before, 2010. And some of the biggest rises in housing help applications came from London boroughs, with Bromley topping the list at 99%, Hammersmith at 92%, Fulham at 92%, Islington at 88%, and Haringey at 83%. The records also included a rise in homeless individuals and families being housed in bed and breakfast accommodations. Reports show that while councils are declining more applicants, the number of people approved as needing housing help rose by 10% in 2010 and 2011, making it the first such rise in 7 years. There was also a 169% increase in rough sleeping since 2010, according to the government's data. According to the charity Homeless Link, the number of homeless persons turned away by local governments because they did not meet the criteria for being considered a priority need increased by 15% between 2010 and 2011. Priority needs criteria include vulnerable young people, such as care leavers, pregnant women, persons with mental illness or disabilities, and households with dependent children. People who experience financial problems need effective help, not a closed door, stated Jenny Edwards, CEO of Homeless Link. Even if they are not defined as being a priority, people shouldn't have to choose between squatting, staying with friends, or illegal rentals, since these are frequently the final destination before the streets. More than half of the 26,400 people's applications were denied, meaning the growing number of hidden homeless people. These are generally people whose situations are not visible, such as in the streets or in official statistics. These people may be forced to go after concealed housing, where they squat or crash in their friends' homes after failing to qualify or apply for official help. They may also include people living in hostels and overcrowded accommodations. The Homelessness Monitor describes the following people as being homeless: people sleeping rough, single homeless people, statutorily homeless households, and hidden homeless households. And as this multitude of people experiencing homelessness keep seeking official help, it in turn puts a strain on support services made available to them. The homeless shelters and outreach programs provided for homeless people are now overwhelmed and unable to meet their growing needs. The question of what is wrong with the UK's housing market comes up. After World War II, a lack of affordable housing in the UK led to a broad incidence of homeless people. Low-income families were impacted by the Housing Homeless Persons Act of 1977, which prohibited members of particular categories from living in desirable neighborhoods. This, along with urbanization drawing more people to cities, led to living conditions that were inadequate and overpopulation. The Housing Act of 1977 required local governments to house the homeless and vulnerable, especially young people living in challenging situations. Although there has been progress in the way that homelessness is addressed since the 1930s, residence deprivation is still a major problem as more individuals are turning to assistance and rough sleeping is becoming more common. Why do people become homeless? The first thing that comes to mind is the price. Other than price, finding the right property is nearly impossible, and there aren't enough properties to go around. And for most people, the right property would always be attached to price, and before you realize it, someone else in dire need of a home outbuys you. The scarcity of housing is one. It is very difficult for anyone to find a new home that meets their needs, is reasonably priced, and hasn't had any offers in recent years. For several years now, there has been a severe scarcity of available homes in the UK housing market. There is intense competition whenever a property is listed for sale as a result of this shortage. There are several causes for the scarcity of available homes. The fact that not enough new homes are being constructed rapidly enough to meet demand is one of the primary causes. The emphasis has switched from developing social housing since the 1980s to depending more on the private sector, which is unable to satisfy the rising demand. Because of this, it takes longer for newly constructed homes to be ready for the market, but by then, many individuals are eager and prepared to buy them. Another major problem that besets the property sector is affordability. High demand and low supply result in inflated real estate prices. As a result, a large number of prospective customers are priced out of the market, making them wait longer. Currently, affordability is only a small portion of the issue. Fears of inflation, rising living expenses, and a recession have been widespread since COVID-19. Many buyers who have been considering buying a property may also be tenants right now. The cost of everything else has gone up, yet rent prices haven't decreased. This once further lowers the amount of money the typical person has available to buy a property. Why do houses cost so much? There are explanations behind the UK's high property prices. The relationship between supply and demand. There is a strong demand for real estate because there is a limited supply. Naturally, this raises pricing. The demand and supply of property in the UK are significantly out of balance, especially in cities like London and the South East. In actuality, rising property values are currently seen in any part of the nation with a large population. Another is the growth in population. The population of the UK has been increasing gradually, and there is a tendency for more individuals to relocate to places with higher concentrations of employment prospects. There are several facets to this problem. First, when families grow, a lot of them would search for homes close to their relatives. Unfortunately, there are a lot of other people who are trying to buy property for this identical motive, which raises the demand even more. Smaller towns also offer fewer prospects for professional advancement and a lower average income than larger ones. The need for real estate rises as a result of people looking to relocate in search of greater earning opportunities. Another is its investment opportunities. Real estate is frequently regarded as a risk-free and profitable venture in the UK, particularly in large cities like London. This draws in both local and foreign investors, increasing the level of competition and raising prices even further. The UK government has, however, taken steps to curb the homelessness crisis. In the UK, non-financial support for the homeless is a major focus of policy and assistance. The Homelessness Reduction Act on April 3, 2018. The Homelessness Reduction Act became operative in England. According to the Act, local authorities are responsible for ensuring that every qualified household has their need for housing and support evaluated. Additionally, it calls for an impartial assessment of the state of affairs in each council district every 3 years to pinpoint areas for additional outcome improvement. According to the Homelessness Reduction Act, local authorities in England have 56 days, which used to be 104 days, to assess individuals who may be homeless or at risk of becoming so. Unless there are extraordinary circumstances that make this impossible within this time frame, the authority has 28 days from the date of assessment to assist an individual who is homeless or at risk of becoming so in finding a safe and secure place to live or to avoid being made homeless. Almost 90% of all applications submitted under the new legislation were approved in the first 2 months after it was introduced from April to June 2018, which is almost 2% greater than under the old guideline, when the government last reviewed homelessness prevention in 2012 to 2013. This demonstrates how quickly people can receive assistance under the new law because they now have a legal right to do so as soon as they report that they are vulnerable because they have lost their homes. In the past, many councils were unable to provide this kind of protection without requiring the completion of drawn-out procedures that, depending on the specifics of each case, could take months or even years. The UK government has already begun funding local governments to address homelessness. The government finances local governments as one of its primary strategies for combating homelessness. This funding is provided by the Department for Communities and Local Government to assist local councils in addressing homelessness and rough sleeping in England, as well as to support individuals who may be at risk of homelessness. Being homeless is more than just not having a place to live. It also involves losing one's self-respect, sense of security, and hope for the future. Those who are homeless must overcome several obstacles, such as restricted access to jobs, healthcare, and education. Their circumstances are made worse by the societal shame and discrimination they frequently experience. The epidemic of homelessness necessitates an all-around response that includes programs for affordable housing, assistance for the homeless, and an effort to deal with the underlying causes of poverty and economic injustice. To guarantee that everyone has a safe and secure place to live, it also calls for compassion, understanding, and a group commitment. Do you think the UK government will strictly follow up the homelessness, or more people will be rendered homeless?